From Roussel Hall on the campus of Loyola University, VoicePack presents the People's Debate for Mayor of New Orleans. Here is your host for this evening from CNN, Alice Stewart.
Good evening and welcome to the People's Debate presented by VoicePack and our host, Loyola University. I'm Alice Stewart. New Orleans is one of America's gems. The great city of almost 400,000 people is renowned worldwide for its culture, heritage, frivolity, and flair. But like many American cities, New Orleans is not without its challenges. 12 years after Hurricane Katrina, on August 5th, relentless rain led to widespread flooding and uncovered dramatic flaws with the city's pumping system, as well as communications among administrations. Crime continues to dominate the headlines in this city, while the police force remains depleted and in need of additional funding and many more recruits. But for all of its troubles, New Orleans is still revered for its easy lifestyle and welcoming ways. Tonight, 3 candidates will stand before you, offering plans and platform planks that they hope will meet some of New Orleans' challenges and lead this city to unparalleled progress. This is the first live television debate of this race, and we will see how the candidates hope to fight crime, raise New Orleans above floodwaters, fix crumbling infrastructure, create new jobs, improve race relations, and much, much more. The candidates will answer questions from a team of journalists. Let's meet those esteemed journalists now. Bruce Nolan spent his 41-year journalism career at the Times-Picayune, the city's daily newspaper. He served as a reporter, editor, columnist, and suburban bureau chief. Bruce, along with many of his colleagues, earned the coveted Pulitzer Prize for their reporting on Hurricane Katrina. Bruce was recently recognized by the New Orleans Press Club with its Lifetime Achievement Award. Best of luck to him this evening. Alan Johnson is a 36-year veteran newsman. As a print journalist, he has contributed to several local news publications, along with writing for the New York Times, Bloomberg News, and the Wire Service in Paris. Alan is currently writing for Courthouse News Service, which offers comprehensive reporting on our nation's courts. Also along with the panel, Joe Duke. He spent a lifetime in broadcast journalism. He was a photographer, a reporter, managing editor, and news director who spent 20 years covering news here in New Orleans, much of it at its leading CBS affiliate, WWL-TV. He also spent a dozen years at CBS News in positions ranging from New York bureau chief to director of recruiting. Today, he is instructor of journalism right here at Loyola University. Jacqueline Mazer has served as a television bureau chief and multimedia reporter. She's a graduate of the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications. That is where she learned at Arizona State University, where she had interaction with Mr. Cronkite, the famed broadcaster known as the most trusted man in America. He inspired her to report the news. Jacqueline is a weekend anchor at New Orleans ABC affiliate, WGNO-TV. And rounding out our panel is Sidney Torres. You all know Sidney is a lifelong resident of New Orleans. He's a local businessman who has vowed to hold the next mayor of New Orleans accountable to you, the voters, and citizens through his political action committee that he founded called VoicePack. Sidney is recognized locally as a successful developer and nationally as host of CNBC's The Deed television docuseries, which focuses on real estate transactions. Now, the most important part, let's meet our candidates. Michael Bagneris. Judge Bagneris served for 20 years as Orleans Parish Civil District Court judge and rose to chief judge. LaToya Cantrell. Councilwoman Cantrell was a community activist before being elected back in 2012 to represent District B. Troy Henry. Mr. Henry spent 20 years as a corporate executive before starting his own company, Henry Consulting. Also, Desiree Charbonnet. After initially accepting our offer to appear, Judge Charbonnet declined our invitation earlier this afternoon. We want to make sure and point that out. Now, let us begin. I want to make sure, candidates, you will have 1 minute to answer the questions we pose to you, and a live yes or no series of questions. We do ask that you stick to either a yes or a no answer. Our first question this evening comes from Bruce Nolan.
Geographers have long told us that the ground we live on is a terrible place to build a city. In 2005, we lost a 300-year struggle against water, and the outlook, with subsidence and wetland deterioration and rising sea level, seems to mean that the situation will only get more expensive. Now some scientists are telling us that our one shot is to develop a new urban water plan, to rethink our relationship with water. Given that this is a moment in which the Sewerage and Water Board seems to need a thorough overhaul, is this also a moment to tell it to rethink how we live with water, or is that just too much pie in the sky?
I start. Okay, great. One, thanks for having me. Great question, Bruce. Look, there are two elements of your question that I think are important. One is the urban water plan is a great plan. It basically gives you the opportunity to figure out how to coexist, and there are a number of ideas that work there. But the more tactical matter today is the Sewerage and Water Board, and it's a mess, because if we don't fix it today, we won't have to worry about living with water. Water's going to live with us, okay, with the floods and things that we've got. So I've got a comprehensive plan, and I hope we get a chance to talk more about it, but I released a plan on all of the renovations that are necessary, top to bottom of the Sewerage and Water Board, that are necessary in order to fix it. 60 seconds ain't going to be enough for me to do it, but what I can tell you is this. It is a comprehensive top to bottom plan. You know, I ran water systems all over the country as a corporate executive for United Water. I was president of United Water. So I ran water systems in Atlanta and Jacksonville and San Antonio and Laredo, Texas, Pine Bluff, Arkansas, a number of cities throughout this country. And other cities have understood how to coexist with water, with rain. What we have now, our challenge today is mismanagement. And if we don't fix the management structure associated with Sewerage and Water Board and how it operates, how it's governed, how it is being led, then all of the comprehensive water management plans won't matter.
Councilwoman Cantrell.
Thank you, and good evening, and thank you to Voice PAC, you know, voice of the people. I've never been a candidate of the machine, but I've always been that of the people, so it really is, I'm feeling good to be here. In regards to living with water, absolutely is something that we have to do. The urban water plan, I think it's essential, as well as the resiliency plan that we do have within the city of New Orleans. I am very much agreeable to building up that department within resiliency to fully implement the urban water management plan. In regards to Sewage and Water Board, it has been just a total disgrace for decades. Okay, it needs to be dismantled and retooled top, bottom to top. Right now, we have a listing out for qualifications for a chief operating officer, chief financial officer, and a project manager, with the director interim leaving in about 2 weeks. So right now, I'm wondering who's manning the Sewage and Water Board. So we have to deal with this issue.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Judge Bagneris.
We don't have to devise a plan. We have a plan. We've had a plan for over 4 years. It's been collecting dust on the shelf, like so many of the plans that New Orleans devises. You know, we have an award-winning plan that was confected by international professional experts. The problem is we haven't executed. We got to execute on the plan, otherwise it's of no value. The plan covers everything that we talked about in terms of living with water. It talks about water parks, water gardens, beautifying canals, permeable streets, everything that you can think of. What we need to do is get some unbiased eyes from the National Research Regulatory Institution, a national organization which was created to help cities with water distribution, have them come in and give us some options. And I say unbiased eyes because I don't want anybody from this state looking at what we need to do as it relates to the Sewage and Water Board. We've done that already, and look where it's gotten us.
Our next question comes from Alan Johnson, and we will start the answers with Councilwoman Cantrell.
Candidates, history tells us, sorry, wrong question. One of you will take the office of mayor next May. Amid the city's historic tricentennial celebration, May is also notorious for heavy rains and street flooding. History tells us one flood in 1881 was so bad that afterwards, an old woman and her 9 cows was found in the upper floors of the Melpomene pumping station. Yet, due to public distrust of government, the Sewage and Water Board was not created until 1899, almost 20 years later. As a modern mayor, how will you persuade a wary public to effectively tax themselves to reform the Sewage and Water Board or its alternative?
Well, our public has already been taxed enough in terms of the Sewage and Water Board. What I propose is that we, as mayor, I will build consensus across the board with our local delegation, meaning state delegation, the New Orleans City Council, me being the mayor, as well as our industries, meaning the business and hospitality industry, so that we go to Baton Rouge with one voice and one plan. And that is for us to ensure that we get more than 1.5% of what's generated off of the hospitality tax here in the city of New Orleans. Now, 1.5% is simply not enough. However, this is the best approach in order to ensure that we have infrastructure dollars to meet the needs of our city, not only in terms of drainage, but of course in terms of sewerage. Right now, the burden has been only on those who are paying property taxes. And so we have to come up with a different strategy.
Same question for you, Judge Bagneris.
Well, first of all, the citizens rightfully distrust its government because the government has been lying to the citizen. That's a major problem. You're not going to get citizens ready to pay more money in taxes to attack any problem once they've been lied to. Everybody knew. John Blow on the street knew that the pumps weren't working. Yet they look at us as if we had idiot tattooed on our foreheads. First of all, we got to regain public confidence. We got to regain public confidence before we could talk about any kind of taxes, because right now the public, me included, feel like we have paid everything to the government that is necessary, yet we still have broken up streets. We still have water that sits on the streets without draining properly. We still have all the infrastructure problems you could think of, and you're going to come back and say we need more money? Won't happen.
Same question, Mr. Henry.
Alan, money isn't our issue. Competence is the issue. We have to start top to bottom. We need a competent board that understands water systems. Currently, we have a board where nobody on it has ever run a water system before. Then we hire general managers that have no experience in doing it. Now we got a $27,000 a week committee running the organization today. In addition to that, the city council needs to act as a regulator. They need to do their jobs as a regulator in order to instill additional confidence with the residents. But then on the technical side, there's a whole host of technical initiatives that need to be done. First, we need to start with AMI technology, automated meter reading. It's a 25-year-old technology that doesn't exist here in New Orleans today. In addition to that, we need a main replacement strategy. Most major cities around the country today have a 50-year main replacement cycle, water mains. Ours, we've got 140-year-old wooden pipes in parts of the ground. In addition to that, we're still on 25 cycle power. 25 cycle power went out in 1932. I'm an electrical engineer. When Edison was plotting out the networks today, everyone else uses 60 cycle power. You hear about all this stuff burning up? It's because we're trying to convert from 25 to 60 or 60 to 25. We need top to bottom renovations in the Sewage and Water Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question from Joe Duke, we'll start with Judge Bagneris.
Judge, getting back to the flood on the 5th, we all know the pumps handled 1 inch an hour, first hour. We all knew it was a big rain. We knew we might be in a little trouble. But were you surprised at the vastness of the problem, and then each day it got worse and worse as we found more and more problems?
I happened to be out that day. I was campaigning, and everything was very, very nice. I was at the convention center. When I'm leaving the convention center, got to Claiborne in Orleans, all I saw was a bunch of cars in a deluge. Fortunately, I was in a truck. But even there, the truck had to try to maneuver around the cars because the cars couldn't go anyplace. To answer your question directly, yes, I was in fact surprised. But what was more surprising, again, was how our government spoke to us about that flood. And I cannot get over the fact that we were dealt with so wrongly. I'm trying to be diplomatic. We were absolutely lied to. You know, all the pumps are working. Even in what Mr. Henry referred to just now about the turbine catching on fire. Come to find out that was a short. You know, once you constantly lie to the citizens, then total trust is lost, and you're not going to be able to get the citizens to do anything until you reestablish that trust factor. And that's what I'm going to do as mayor.
Same question for Mr. Henry.
Well, I was not only surprised, I was affected. I have a business on the corner in Mid-City, on the corner of Tulane and Jeff Davis, that actually was affected by that flood. But I wasn't surprised. You see, I've been talking to the Sewage and Water, but I am a water management expert, okay? I've run water systems all over the country. They begged this mayor to allow me to help them, okay? And this mayor chose politics over competence. And what has happened now is now you're understanding of what lack of leadership, and when you put political agendas over the technical agendas and the safety of our citizens first. Because now what we have is a number of people that have now flooded, their vehicles flooded, their homes flooded. Why? Because the folks that are there didn't know what they were doing. Listen, the last time Cedric Grant worked in the water industry was for me, in an administrative, not secretarial, but an administrative position. And to put him in a job as the head of the Sewage and Water Board would be like putting my 4-year-old in a calculus class, okay? And that's what they did, and now you see the results of it, okay?
Councilwoman Cantrell. Councilwoman.
Okay. I was lied to as an elected official on the New Orleans City Council, and that is totally unacceptable. And being on that phone and sending emails and telling the administration, I know that I'm not, what you're saying isn't true, that all the pumps are working. It was not true. And because knowing the fabric of our city, knowing the fabric of my district, and where it does flood and where it does not, I knew that they were lying. And so I held them to that, and I had to go publicly with that. And another thing, what we've learned since then, and every day, you know, when you drive, you think you've seen the worst pothole until you take a left and here's another one. That's what we're finding out every single day right now with the assessment. And what's very clear, that whole 1 inch per, it's not a fact. It's a lie too. So what we need, again, Sewage and Water Board has to be retooled, restructured, top, bottom, bottom, top.
Knowing what we know now, I do have a follow-up question. Starting with you, Judge Bagneris, how would you have handled the situation differently if you had been in charge at the time?
Well, had I been in charge, the situation wouldn't have occurred. So that's the truth. You know, I take responsibilities. I always get the facts before I take any action. If there's a mess, I make sure that the mess is fixed. But one thing for sure, I always tell the truth to the people, no matter how hard or difficult that may be.
Thank you.
That's why it would have never happened under my administration.
Thank you. Same question for Mr. Henry.
Well, I will agree with the judge on that. Under my administration, it wouldn't have happened because we would have been doing the right things. For example, what do the right things look like? Well, any water system in any city knows that you over-maintain the lowest lying areas. Why? Because water flows to the lowest point. So you make sure that catch basins in the lowest point specifically are cleaned. The current plan that they have was to clean catch basins once every 18 years. Okay? Once every 18 years. That's not competence. So we would have put a team in place, and we will have a team in place to do much better. I guess my time's up.
Councilwoman Cantrell.
would not have happened under my watch. And bottom line, as I've demonstrated time and time again, I am honest with the public. I tell the truth. We New Orleanians, we like to tell it straight and we like to get it back straight. And that's the only way that we're going to address the situation with real solutions. It's being honest.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Jacqueline Mazur. We'll start with Troy Henry.
Wonderful. Thank you. Candidates, thank you so much for being here this evening. Oftentimes, voters hear a lot of false promises during campaigning. It's easy to look back on a situation and say what we would have or should have done. How can you gain the public's trust as it pertains to the Sewerage and Water Board, for example? And then secondly, once you've gained that trust, with what finances will you use to ensure that history will not repeat itself?
It's an excellent question, sort of related to the previous one. First thing we'll do is we'll execute. And we'll execute with a proven team and a team of experienced professionals at every level of the organization, one. Second thing we'll do is we'll put in place a performance management system, something this city has never used and never had, which is when I was managed water systems throughout the country, I had a dashboard. And I could look at that dashboard and I could tell you what was going on in Jacksonville, Laredo, Atlanta, et cetera, right? And I could drill down and know what was working, what wasn't working, red, yellow, green. Today, they can't tell you how many pumps are working. We're going to put a complete top-to-bottom performance management system in, not only in the Sewage and Water Board, but the rest of city government too, because everyone's going to have productivity assumptions. Everyone's going to actually have a performance plan that they have to be held accountable to. That's the level of performance that the citizens of New Orleans are asking for and believe they deserve for the tax dollars that we pay. What we've gotten is a bunch of mumbo-jumbo, and that's not my style. I deliver and I execute.
Councilwoman Cantrell.
Well, based on my track record of listening to people, building consensus, and delivering results, getting things done, I believe that I've gained the trust of the community. And in that spirit, I will lead and govern as the next mayor of the city of New Orleans. Regards to the leadership and management of the Sewage and Water Board, yes, we have to ensure that those who are hired for these positions have the skill sets and core competencies to do the job. We have to be transparent, and of course, that leads to better accountability. It starts at the top with me, but also ensuring that there are checks and balances in place, ensuring that maintenance occurs in a timely manner, having performance measures in place so that we can hold folks accountable. We have to ensure that the 350 vacancies that are current within the Sewage and Water Board are filled. We have to make sure that those positions and the people who work for the Sewage and Water Board have at least a living wage and above to do the jobs that need to be done. So this is a complex issue. It is top to bottom here, and I'm committed to delivering results.
Judge Bagneris.
Well, as mayor, one of the first things that I will do is I'm going to vet Troy Henry to be head of the Sewage and Water Board.
I got a different job in mind, Judge.
Yes. But you regain trust once the citizens realize that you are sincere. And if you maintain and constantly maintain, as I stated before, the fact that you're going to always tell the truth to the citizens. You know, if you continue along that path and you regain the trust. Now, from a financial standpoint, because no one has spoken really directly to the finances, you know, we have a president who just indicated that he wants to spend trillions of dollars on infrastructure. Well, we could be the template for that spending. You know, we could be the model city for the nation in terms of how you go about restructuring in infrastructure.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Bruce Nolan, and we will start the answers with Councilwoman Cantrell.
This is a very straightforward sort of yes or no question. Doesn't call for a lot of elaboration. It seems like we've got a very clear consensus on this issue, that the problems with the Sewage and Water Board are first and foremost people problems, management problems, not fundamentally money problems. Yet the Sewage and Water Board has said it needs $55 million to make things right. For each of you, is that simply a non-starter at this point?
What do you mean a non-starter?
Their request for $55 million.
Well, that's tied to both drainage and sewer, so on the DPW side as well as the Sewage and Water Board side.
But you seem to be saying that they need to put their shop in order before we talk about raising more funds for them. Is that the thrust that we're hearing tonight?
Sure, but raising more funds have to depend on a thorough assessment of what the needs are and being very open and honest with the public about what those needs are so that we collectively can be on the same page about how we're going to pay for those improvements that will be needed. It's no question, we will need more money.
Judge Bagneris.
You correctly stated my position. The fact of the matter is we need to have unbiased eyes, as I stated earlier. I believe we could get those unbiased eyes from the National Regulatory Research Institute or the American Water Works Association. Let the national organization come in and give us their appreciation or its appreciation of the system. At that point in time, if they're telling us that is going to be a $55 million fix, at least we make the public aware of that. That's that hard truth that you'd have to tell. And then we have to make a determination as a city how we go about dealing with getting that financing. And as I stated earlier, we got a pretty powerful guy in Congress right now, Steve Scalise, who happens to be the majority whip. He could kind of whisper in the president's ear too and say, I know a city that could use some of that trillion that you have in terms of fixing up infrastructure.
Thank you. Mr. Henry?
Well, when you look at it today, the request for money comes from an organization that has very little credibility. So to think that they need $55 million without having optimized their organization is ludicrous. We've got a mayor today that treats everybody in this city like a walking ATM machine, okay? Every time he gets an idea, he wants to take money out of our pockets. I have no confidence in the $55 million number. Let me give you an example. The AMI metering technology that I'm talking about today will improve revenue for the Sewage and Water Board. Why? Because there'll be more accurate meter reading. It's all done digitally. Have they optimized that equation and figured out how much money is going to be gained from that before you start asking the citizens to dig into their pockets? You understand what I'm saying? We don't have a level of competence at this point in time in Sewage and Water Board for them to ask us for a nickel, okay? What we need is leadership in place that can overhaul that organization. Then we'll figure out and assess what our actual needs are.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Alan Johnson.
Yeah, I've been through enough of these forums over the years to know that...
We'll go to Judge Bagneris.
Oh, okay. That oftentimes in New Orleans, whenever we have a scandal, we want to throw out the entire board or run somebody out of town. And I mean, I recall right before Katrina, there was a debate a good, vigorous debate about whether to privatize the Sewage and Water Board. And then when Katrina came, there were 50 public employees who stayed, let their families evacuate, and they stayed to help drain the floodwaters out of the city. And then they went next door to Jefferson Parish. So we're talking a lot about the corruption at the top. What about the folks at the bottom? Where will they go next?
Judge?
All right. First of all, in terms of the people at the top and the terminations that took place, I think that was absolutely justified. I don't think it went far enough. I think that the mayor should have terminated himself. To talk about, I don't know, or I wasn't told, if you're president, it's your duty, it's your responsibility to know. That's number one. Now, the people at the bottom, they are the ones who actually made us aware of what the real problems happen to have been. When, and I don't recall the gentleman's name who spoke before the city council, who just ran down point by point why we had the problems with the sewage system. So, and your last, so they should be taken care of. But your last point in terms of your reference to privatization, in my book, absolutely not. We should never privatize water. It is the essence of life. I don't want the essence of life in some private hands.
Mr. Henry.
The folks that work at the Sewage and Water Board today are good people. They're good, honest, hardworking individuals who are underpaid, undercompensated. But the morale in that organization is very low. Why? Because they know they have no confidence in the folks above them. Because the folks above them don't have the skill set or the integrity levels to necessarily be an organization they want to follow. Our mayor decided we were going to have a national search, and he came up with Cedric Grant as his head of it, okay? What do you think those people down in the organization thought about that, knowing that a guy who last time he spent his time in this industry was working for me in an administrative capacity? You don't think they knew that? You destabilize the morale when you lie to people and then you expect them to buy what you got because you have position authority over them. So what we have to do is we have to truly demonstrate credibility across the board and integrity. And that has not been the case with the Sewage and Water Board. It will be the case under my watch as the mayor, and it will be, and they need structure. And we will give them structure and guidance because they're good, hardworking people, understaffed, and hardworking.
Councilwoman Cantrell.
You know, I remember after Katrina and rebuilding Broadmoor with my community, we were telling Marcia St. Martin, who was the chair at the time, along with her staff, that the pumps were not rewired. They kept telling the community, yes, they were, yes, they were. We said, we have data, we have fact. They were not rewired. Held a press conference. The night before the press conference, pumping stations caught on fire. They showed up trying to do damage control. My point is, it has been, mismanaged for decades. Becker, who left here, was there for 30 years. He was there 30 years. So I understand your comments about Grant, but this really does show the problem is much deeper, and it is systemic, and we have to gut it out, and we have to get leadership in place, and not just the mayor now. I'm talking the board. We can no longer have a faceless Sewage and Water Board. It was faceless.
Can we get a chance to talk a little privatization? I know neither one of us got a chance to do that because we ran out of time.
We're getting ready to change topics right now. We'll have the opportunity to revisit some of these. We are going to, flooding is a critical issue without a doubt in this race and in this town. Also fighting crime. And we're going to switch topics to fighting crime and what we can do to reduce crime in the city. I will start off with our panelist, Alan Johnson, and we will start the answering with Troy Henry.
Mr. Henry, you'll like this question.
All right, cool. Let's get it. 7
years ago, the mayor's election was decided the night before the Saints played and won their first Super Bowl, as you recall.
I like this one. Yeah. You know, I was in that one.
Yeah.
That was a rough night for me, Alan.
Well, it gets better. Mayor-elect Landrieu promised New Orleans that he would get a quote, Drew Brees of police chiefs.
He stole that from me, by the way. Yeah, you got it right. Okay.
You got it straight. His first chief got mixed reviews at best, but the promise still has a ring to it. And so what characteristics would you look for in a police superintendent today? And what will New Orleans offer under your administration to attract a top cop, given all the competition nationwide for police officers rank and file?
Excellent question, Alan. Just the reminder about the 7 years ago is the part that's a little challenging, okay? Right. Well, listen, the first thing that, we've got this quirky period of time now where we've got a 6-month transition period between election in November and the actual taking of office. So during that 6-month window, what I will do is we're going to do a root cause analysis of all of the challenges associated with the police department today. We got a response time problem. I talked to a couple in New Orleans East, called the police after burglary. 36 hours later, somebody showed up at their house. We got some major issues there. We're going to do the root cause analysis, and there will be some gaps. We'll overlay those gaps against best practices, right? We need to know what is the differences. Based upon those gaps, that's what we'll use as the attributes necessary in prioritizing the selection of the leadership team, including the chief, for our police department. It doesn't make sense to just randomly pick somebody if you don't know what your needs are. So the needs assessment has to go on first. Then you use that as your underlying criteria to selecting the best chief that satisfies the gapped objectives that we know exist in our current administration. That's the process.
Councilwoman Cantrell.
I agree with a thorough needs assessment of the department. However, we know some of our existing conditions right now. In terms of looking at a police chief, what I will be looking for is someone with a proven track record of reducing crime in urban environments. Someone who has effectively implemented neighborhood policing strategies. Someone who understands how to build morale and empower our men and women in blue to be the best that they can be, giving them the tools and resources that they need to be successful. It's a shame that those in our crime lab, they're taking their own Scotch tape to the crime scene. Unacceptable. It's a shame that our homicide division that was up towards 60 is down in the 20s, and yet again, no real tools. But I have voted to increase pay in homicide because there's a deficit there. We will ensure that our officers are no longer required to do wall time when they're picking up some of our mental health, our residents suffering from mental health, and being required to stand there for hours on end until our people get placement. Unacceptable.
Thank you. Same question for Judge Bagneris.
Obviously, the police chief has to have a plan to address the violent crime problem that we have. But not only a plan, he has to have a matrix system to determine that that plan is actually working. And then he has to have the courage to switch gears in the event that that it's not working. He has to recognize that he was wrong and made a mistake, he or she. And he or she ought to also have the ability to know about neighborhood patrolling, should have some tech knowledge so that we are able to use his leadership as a force multiplier with technology, where we could bring in desperately needed license plate readers, more crime cameras, shot spotters, things of that nature to help with the crime problem. But most importantly, he has to be a police chief that's going to be proactive, not reactive.
Thank you. Our next question on the topic of crime comes from Jacqueline Mazur, and we will start the answering with Councilwoman Cantrell.
Thank you. In November 2015, 17 people were shot on a Sunday evening in Bunny Friend Park in New Orleans' Upper Ninth Ward. This shooting received international attention. If elected, how do you plan to curb gun violence in our city and forge community support for gun control?
Well, I have a demonstrated track record of really fighting for gun control laws in our state. However, what I would do in terms of curbing it, on the front end, I would really encourage, we are going to have to expand the Tiger initiative that's going on, which has led to a reduction in those types of violent crimes, robberies at gunpoint alike. But that needs to be fully implemented. I would also, in terms of implementing that or expanding that, it's really having a laser focus on those individuals who are committing the crime, getting them off of the street, apprehending them, and bringing justice where it is totally deserved. And another thing in terms of bunny friends, we have to do better with stabilizing the environments in which our people are living. They were asking for effective lighting. They were reporting drug trafficking in the area. They were doing everything that we say you should do in terms of being vigilant in your community. But the administration has to do better. As mayor, I will focus on this holistically.
Judge Bagneris.
I'm sorry. As we build our police department, we have to act smart while we build. And part of acting smart is realizing that there's a small group of gun toters, there's a small group of criminals that are responsible for a significant portion of the crime that takes place. We have to concentrate, we have to focus on that group. We have to get that group off the street. When we do that, we're going to be getting those guns off the street. Then we have to support, as much as we possibly can, all legislation that deals with gun control. There's a Congressman Scott who but introduced a bill where he's indicating that you can keep your guns, particularly your automatic weapons, however, they're not going to manufacture bullets that will allow you to use those guns anymore. I think that's a good idea, but I know I'll have a large problem with the National Rifle Association, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Anything we could do to get guns off the street, I'm going to support.
Thank you. Mr. Henry.
Yes, a couple things that I'm going to do to immediately address this crime problem. First of all, I played ball at Bunny Friend Park as a little leaguer, and my grandmother lived 1 block from Bunny Friend Park on the corner of Gallia and Johnson. So it's very, very tragic what happened there. Now, first thing we'll have a strike force. The strike force is going to go after the meanest dudes that we've got in town. And it's going to be like an FBI 10 most wanted list, and we're going to go after them. And if their families are harboring them, we're going to go after them as well. We're going to make life very difficult for them. Second of all, we're going to form a strategic alliance with any and every state-certified law enforcement agency possible to get more boots on the ground. We do not have enough physical police presence in our neighborhoods today. Third, we're also going to have a requirement that every single officer, including the chief, does 1 patrol a week, 1 patrol shift per week. We have to have more officers in our communities able to respond. You ever had a car accident? How long it took for somebody to come? It's unacceptable, the level of response times that we have today. That's what we'll do. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Joe Duke, and we will start the answering with Judge Bagneris.
Judge, more police? We need more police. How do we recruit them? How do we keep them?
First of all, we absolutely need more police. I was happy to hear one of my opponents indicate that, because the only way you're going to get boots on the ground is you got to get more police. The only way you're going to get a quicker response time is you have to get more police. We had 1,600 police. Now we got a handful over 1,000. That's why we're having the problems. That's why we can't put police in neighborhoods. Now, how do we get them? First of all, we have to pay more. We can get more police. We pay more. Paying more is going to serve not only as a recruitment device, it's also going to serve as a retention device. So we also need to get professional experts to do the hiring aspect. We need to brand our city as a place where police officers are welcome and respected for their jobs of protecting and serving. We need to get professionals to do that, because it's backlogged in the police department right now. It's not that we don't have enough applications. We got enough applications. They're not being processed in any kind of timely fashion. We need to get the professionals in to do that.
Thank you. Same question for Mr. Henry.
We need, obviously, more physical police presence. I talked a little bit about the strike force. I talked a little bit about the additional officers that we'll put on the ground with every person patrolling. That puts more in the neighborhood. But in addition to that, what we're also going to do is we're going to offer amnesty for former police officers to move back to the city. You see, the reason 8 years ago when I ran for office, we had 1,450 officers and a budget of $114 million. Today, we've got 1,060 with a budget of $163 million. 1/3 less officers with 1/3 more money. And the reason for that is we messed with their detail money. We changed the way they allowed to do pay details, and those officers spoke with their feet by walking away. So I want to change the detail policy to something that's reasonable and works for them, but at the same point in time, offer them amnesty, offer their positions back and their levels back so that they can come back, not only recruiting new officers, but also recruiting veteran officers back to the police department.
Councilwoman Cantrell.
Yes, well, of course we need more boots on the ground and hire more police officers. And what we've seen is that it's taken a long time to do that, and even after thousands apply. After those thousands go through, about 2.6% of them shake through, and about 2% actually go to the academy. And that doesn't mean that 2% are higher. So definitely improve upon the training and the outreach that's necessary. But when you have a healthy organization, that sets the tone for better recruitment. And that's what I'm going to be focused on, building up the department. We also have to have alternative strategies, expanding the alternative response initiative that's in place so that people can report using their technology, their phones, the internet, that sort of thing. I would also ensure that housing costs When I was in Broadmoor and even on the council, we ensured that upfront costs, soft seconds were provided for first responders. I would also make sure that the pay raise that's in place now will continue to be passed, will get passed by the New Orleans City Council. So I've demonstrated my commitment to ensuring we get more boots on the ground.
Thank you. Sticking with the important topic of crime, our next question comes from Bruce Nolan, and we will start with Mr. Henry.
So to follow up on this conversation and keep it going, all of you want to enlarge the police force. Some of you want to give police raises as well. But a year and a half ago, New Orleans voters explicitly voted down a property tax increase intended to hire more police. Some of you want to redirect money from other causes to put it into the police department. But some of you also want to redirect money from other causes to buttress our infrastructure problems. So where do we get the money to put more boots on the ground?
It's me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Great question, Bruce. Thank you. I already alluded to you a little bit of the difference. There are some gaps that are missing in our police department when we've got so much more money and so much fewer officers. So I believe there's a lot of inefficiency that's there. I know there is, all over the city budget today. We don't have a revenue problem anymore. We got a management problem. Let me give you an example of that. In the mayor's office, when I ran 8 years ago, there was 133 people working in the mayor's office. Today, there's 257. Okay, same mayor's office. Why? Okay, there are whole entourages that exist inside of that as a sign of patronage that have to go away. I'm gonna scrub the budget. I understand efficiency. I run my own company. I've run other businesses and understand how to get efficiencies so that we can redirect dollars in the areas that are priority. The other thing we have to do is we also have to address the root cause of a lot of the crime, poverty. We have to address the root cause, opioid addiction. So we need to make sure that we're giving an opportunity for programs like Odyssey House to deal with all of those folks that are doing the smash and grabs because they need the cash to get a fix. So we're going to be comprehensive in our approach, but there's a tremendous amount of inefficiency that exists here today. But now there's not a revenue problem. It is an expense management problem that exists.
Councilwoman Cantrell.
Being on the New Orleans City Council, we have definitely passed raises for police officers for recruitment and also for retention. And I stand by that. I also stand by the fact that I wasn't supportive of that request going to the people because, one, the resources are there. The budget is the largest that it's been with fewer officers. But we have to make sure in terms of the dollars that we spend that they're being spent wisely. For example, the administration asked the council not too long ago to place on the October 14th ballot an increase, a millage, to raise pay. I said, wait a minute now, I'm looking at technology, and that's hidden in the business management services compartment within the budget. Every year, that allocation has grown, yet spent 50%. So I said, hey, that's your money right there. On the council, on the desk, was told, oh, we found the money. Absolutely, you found the money. It was there. So I know the budget, I know where the money is, and I know that we can ensure that we get boots on the ground with what is already allocated.
Thank you. Judge Bagneris.
I don't make a comment without doing my homework. I indicated early on that we were going to get 300 officers, and we were going to pay them $10,000 across the board, and that's going to be $10 million additional. Well, it just so happens that the last report that came out from the city demonstrating the budget for 2018 happens to be a $10 million increase. We knew that that was going to come out that way, and it's going to be a $10 million increase over the next 3 years. That's their estimates. Now, let's assume those estimates are wrong. Any good executive, any good manager can look at a $613 million budget and find less than 2% in order to pay the police if that's your priority. If public safety is your priority, you can find the money.
Thank you, Judge. I want to take a moment to thank everyone for tuning in to the People's Debate live here from Loyola University. We're going to take a quick break. We have many more topics to discuss, including race, jobs, infrastructure, and financial literacy. We'll be right back with the People's Debate coming up.
Thank you for joining us for this important mayoral debate. I hope you are learning a great deal about the candidates vying to be our next mayor. When I decided that I would not be a candidate myself, I pledged to you I would work to hold candidates accountable to the voters. So I created VoicePack, the voice of the people. We New Orleanians deserve solutions to problems, not rehearsed sound bites. This debate is a beginning for us to hear specific plans and platforms that may guide us for the next 4 years. Voice of the people, VoicePack, is a movement, and you see the power of that movement here in beautiful Rousseau Hall on Loyola University campus. Because in this audience tonight, more than 800 registered voters have gathered in one place to hear the ideas and ideologies of 4 of the top-rated candidates. This may well be the largest audience for a live televised mayoral debate in the history of our city. VoicePack wants you to be engaged, to care about our future, to demand more of our elected officials. And I pledge to you tonight that regardless of who's elected, I will use the strength of the people's voice to remind our next mayor of the promises made and the promises that must be kept. I want to thank you for your time and interest in our city's future. I want to thank Loyola University for being so forward-thinking and making this debate a possibility. And I also want to thank our public television partners, WLAE and WYES, for proving the power of educational television. VoicePack will be the spark that ignites public conversation, interest, and engagement that defines political command. Together, when we raise our voice, we help our city rise. Because during this campaign, you now have a platform, VoicePack, to let your voice be heard. I'm Sidney Torres, and I hope you learn a great deal during tonight's debate.
Welcome back to the People's Debate, brought to you by VoicePack, hosted here at Loyola University. It's been a great opportunity to hear about the issues that are important to the people of New Orleans with 3 of the candidates vying for this top job. We're going to dig right back into the key issues that are important in this race. We've been talking about floods, crime. We will continue to discuss issues such as race, education, financial literacy, and more on fighting crime. We're going to go back to the panelists here, Jacqueline Laser, and the first question, we will start with Councilwoman Cantrell.
Thank you. According to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, 20 to 25% of the homeless population in the United States suffers from some sort of severe mental illness. Do you believe the city's routine removal of homeless camps under the Pontchartrain Expressway and the I-10 overpass on Claiborne Avenue is a long-term solution to end homelessness and crime in our city? Additionally, as mayor, how do you plan to tackle homelessness in our city and address our citizens' need for mental health services?
This is an issue that is very near and dear to me. I have been working on it for over 3 years. I feel that the city of New Orleans has to create a comprehensive low-barrier shelter that will meet our people where they are, ensuring that they have mental health services, substance abuse services, detox, a place where they can have their families. Right now, there's a choice between whether I go with my husband or I stay under the bridge, or can my children and my husband come with me? Those types of opportunities are not there for our people, and they should be. So I was the one who led the charge in that regard, working with the DDD, getting their board to put up $1 million, taking it to my colleagues, got us to double that, and also got the administration to make it a top priority, because it has been and it is a priority for the people. So I'm committed to fully implementing that. I have to say, as it's moving forward now, it has been dumbed down, but we will make sure that we recreate a low-barrier shelter with all the services that it takes to meet our people where they are under my administration.
Judge Bagneris.
The city has a right, using the coroner's office, to examine all those people that you just referred to. Those who have the mental health problems or opioid problems, which the medical profession says the same, that's considered a mental health problem, we will put in a communal setting, a communal housing. The venue hasn't been determined yet, but there are several that's being looked at. Now, once they're there, we can actually have the parties who are living there pay for the services themselves through their Social Security. That program is already happening on a smaller level with a group called Grace Outreach. The federal government approves it. They take their Social Security funds, pay for the food, shelter, clothing, and medical treatment that they receive, and then there's a portion that's put away for the individual, him or herself. As far as the homeless goes, what we need to do is get more, what we need to do is get more affordable structures so that the homeless are not homeless, but in the meantime, get them hooked up with the nonprofit organizations that treat those that particular service.
Thank you. Mr. Henry.
You know, nobody deserves to live under a bridge. Sleep under a bridge, I mean, it's not healthy. It's obviously not healthy for them physically or mentally. We have to do better than that as a society and as a city. Now, what will Troy Henry do? First, I am a supporter of the low barrier shelter. We have to have a place they're going to convert the OVA into a place for homeless to live. We've got to do that. We've got to execute it well. But we also have to make sure that those individuals have health services, mental health in many cases, as well as treatment services available to them. Like I mentioned earlier, like Odyssey House and Bridge House and those types of things. Now, some of those things, but we have to make sure that as a mayor we advocate to continue the Obamacare expansion, because with it, that's what funds a lot of the services that they receive. Now, I also am a fan of Unity and their programs of helping eliminate homelessness. But it's important to understand that along with the panhandler problem, if a person doesn't want to live, wants to live under the shelter, under the bridge, I should say, and they're going to do this panhandling, I'm not a fan of that. And my message is, if you don't want treatment, you don't want low barrier housing, you need a bus ticket, okay? Because it is not necessary to be here.
Thank you. Same question for Councilwoman Cantrell.
I'm sorry?
The same question for you.
Okay.
She had.
I did.
Oh, okay, excuse me. I'm sorry. Okay, excuse me. Excuse me. Okay. Well, next question we will go to come from Joe Duke, and we will start with Judge Bagneris.
Judge, I was here a long time, then I was gone a long time, and then I'm back. I was surprised at the various parts of the criminal justice system, the sheriff, the mayor and NOPD, and the judges and the district attorney. Somehow they seem to be struggling with one another as opposed to developing one voice toward fighting the crime problem that we have. How would you address that? How do you bring those parties together?
Well, first of all, we're glad to have you back, Joe. All right?
Glad to be back.
We have, or we're supposed to have, a criminal justice system. The key word there is system, which automatically indicates that all those parties that you mentioned are supposed to be working together. They're not supposed to be any discord among the system. That's when that happens, the system falls. So we have to get everybody together. We have to get everybody together now and have them appreciate that we are dealing with a system. I did that in another level when I was judge of civil district court. You will find that when I was there, and particularly when I was chief judge, the clerk of court, First City Court, and the judges all got along. We all worked as a system. Even when the percentages of funds was changed out, we found a way to work together. A good leader is always going to find a way to work together. I'm a good leader.
Thank you. Mr. Henry.
You know, there are three equal branches of government in the city of New Orleans. But this mayor thinks that one is more equal than the others, okay? And because of that, he doesn't get along with anybody, the sheriffs, the judges, you name it, because he believes he's, almighty. Under my leadership, we will work hand in hand to demonstrate to them that we are all in the same boat. We all have the same common interests. We have the same ultimate customer, which is the citizens of New Orleans. We will work on a collaborative manner to ensure that the public's interest is what's looked after and not necessarily any political agendas that are being looked after. The second thing is that, listen, you've heard me talk about it. I'm committed to what's called performance management. And I want not only the mayor's office and the organization that he manages to adhere to that, I'm also committed to the rest of government also committing to performance management, demonstrating their value, demonstrating that they're actually executing on behalf of the citizens of New Orleans, and not just having everybody go along to get along. That's how I believe we'll have a best working relationship with those organizations.
Thank you. Same question for Councilwoman Cantrell.
Almost leading like a judge, bam, with the gavel decision, and that just happens. You know what? Criminal justice system has to make sure, we have to make sure that we're looking at it holistically. Each system needs to be funded adequately if we're going to reduce crime and make our people safe. I will not be a mayor who rules that way. I'm a consensus builder. I listen, build consensus, and deliver results. Now, the infighting and the divide and conquer type of culture has to go away. And leadership, my leadership, will ensure that that happens. No more fear tactics, no more of this fighting one another. It has led to us spending more of the taxpayers' dollars than fixing the system and making our people safe. So we have to change the way that we work together, but you do it by example. And I want to be that example. I want to make sure that not just the criminal justice system, but that this culture is changed throughout government, period.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Bruce Nolan. We will start the answering with Mr. Henry.
Mr. Henry, you alluded to this very briefly a few moments ago, but I'm going to ask you and the other panelists to expand on this. We're talking about crime, and we're talking almost exclusively about police and arrests and jails, and that's terribly important. But then my next question is, give me one example of something that we can do effectively to reduce crime that doesn't involve more police and more arrests and more people in jail.
I am so glad you asked that question. Let me tell you, the first thing is jobs. We have a poverty problem in New Orleans today. Poverty begets hopelessness. Hopelessness is what begets criminal activity. You will hear me talk about it. I will migrate 40,000 new jobs to the city of New Orleans through the aggressive recruitment of Fortune 1000 companies. I will have a customized value proposition that will compel them to migrate jobs here. Go into the details to it. With a job in hand, it helps us with our crime problem because individuals now have a chance to make a living wage. You know, my grandfather ran the docks of New Orleans many years ago. You could be a high school dropout and you could come in and you could make a living. You could go work on the riverfront or at the post office and you could make a living. Today, if that's that same individual and we got a 20% dropout rate here, they're either going to do something dishonest, immoral, or illegal. And that's not viable options. So we have to have a better job base here. You'll hear me talk about it. 16 to 20 Fortune 1000 companies. Physical presence here allows individuals to make a living wage, allows them the ability to not have to do these dishonest things. And that's what we need. New Orleans isn't growing. It doesn't have job growth. And it's the reason that we've got the crime problem that we have today.
Councilwoman Cantrell.
Hey, I've been quoted as saying, nothing stops a bullet like a job. We have to connect our people to real opportunity in our city. The gap of disparity has grown significantly in this post-Katrina environment, although the need was great pre-Katrina. So ensuring that our people have adequate programs for workforce development and training so that we can make those connections, but also in the fields that we know are here in our city and that are growing, training them for jobs that are growing here. whether that is advanced manufacturing, digital media platforms, renewable energy, stormwater management, the medical industry, technology. Those jobs are here and they're growing. But we have to allow for them to scale up. We have to give people real access to capital as well so that they, the small businesses, can grow, because they're the ones who really do hire those who are hardest to employ. So that access to capital is essential, but education and linking our people to those opportunities is a priority.
Same question to Judge Bagneris.
I agree that jobs are very, very, very instrumental in reducing the crime problem, but that takes a while for us to get there. Jobs are, because we got 44% of the African American able-bodied community still looking for a job. So if it was just a job, we'd already be reduced in crime. One way to do it immediately is to go ahead and deal with legislation. Right now, unlike our sister states, we can get the same amount of time for a $500 ripoff that the other sister states say you need $2,500 to do. So just that pen difference would cause a difference in incarceration rate. Just change some of the laws to make them more in step with some of our sister states are doing as well. The other thing is training. We need to train our police officers to stop picking up the juveniles. 96% of the juveniles are arrested. 3 out of 4 are there for a non-serious offense. And then what happens is they get a terrible police record and makes them go into a life of crime. So there are other things that we can deal with other than a job.
Mr. Henry.
I started.
Okay, excuse me. All right, first, now I want to say, first off, my bad. I want to commend all of the candidates for sticking to time. Everyone has done a tremendous job, and let me just say it is very difficult to answer these difficult questions in the time allotted, so I want to commend all of you for that.
So that means we can take more?
No, that doesn't mean that at all. No. We're going to stick one last question on crime. It's such an important topic here, and we're going to include Sidney Torres, and we will start the responses with Councilwoman Cantrell.
The French Quarter Task Force app that I paid for and donated to the city led to a 45% decrease in crime. Will you keep it in the French Quarter, and will you expand the use of task force technology citywide that will track deployment on GPS and encourage citizens' participation in See Something, Say Something?
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Torres, we know that criminal justice isn't a video game. However, the apps that you created were effective. It reduced crime. So I would be crazy not to not only keep it, but fully implement it citywide, in addition to other technological advances. So I would love to scale up next door. I'm on it all the time, communicating with my constituents, and I think that it's very effective. I visited their offices in San Francisco. It was built for city government as well. The city has implemented, but again, it's not at the level that we're going to take it because we're not using it to the best of our ability, playing to our strength with that. Shot spotter technology as well, I would love for us to do. I've led the effort on getting license plate readers, visited Jefferson Parish, brought some of my colleagues over there so they could see how it worked, and then brought them on in to advocate not only for the license plate readers, but for crime cameras as well.
Judge Bagneris.
All communities deserve to have police attention, but the French Quarter is special. We had over 10 million visitors to the French Quarters last year. So you want to take the French Quarter and ensure that our visitors as well as the residents there are protected. And the app certainly was a great contribution to that particular goal. There are other ways that we can also bring about that goal. We can get gun-sniffing dogs. We can get drug-sniffing dogs. We can get more crime cameras in. We can have horseback police officers patrolling the French Quarter, and we can have bikes. Particularly, we could have the cadets on bikes inside in uniform, patrolling the French Quarter. There are other ways that we can deal with it. Your app was an absolute perfect way to deal with it that doesn't really cost anything.
Mr. Henry.
First of all, Sydney, thank you for the commitment to the app. It's been wonderful. You know, I hate to hit Ms. Charbonnet because she's not here, but I saw advertising this 5-minute response time. Let me tell you something. I know some folks, 5 minutes, they'll clean your house out, okay? All right? You know? So that's unacceptable. We need much better response times than that. Now, under my administration, we're going to expand upon the app, though. And what we're going to do is that app is also going to be expanded to all other areas of life. You see a pothole, you take a picture, you're going to get a tracking number. You see a leak somewhere, you take a picture, you get a tracking number. You see crime, it automatically goes to 911. That's the expansion of the app. By the way, you go to City Hall, somebody treats you nice, you can say Ms. Jones treated you nice in the app. She treated you bad, you can say Ms. Jones was bad in the app. And when it's time for her performance evaluation, Ms. Jones, under my administration, is now going to get a boss evaluation, peer evaluation, and public evaluation. We're going to have full accountability across the board. That app becomes very, very important for us.
All right, we are going to switch to another vital topic that's important to the people here in New Orleans, which is infrastructure. And we will start with panelist Joe Duke, and responses we will begin with Congresswoman Cantrell.
Councilman.
I'm sorry. Councilwoman.
What's with the streets? I'm gone 12 years, I come back, I forgot. It's like Tortola. It's terrible. I know that it's a tough problem that you guys know about, but it seems to me it's a very expensive problem, and it's citywide. What are you going to do to fix that?
Well, it definitely is a problem. And we have streets that have been neglected, again, for over 100 years. And we have to be accountable to that. So what I will do is ensure that the resources that we have that are allocated, one, we use, but also I would like to triple that bottom line so that we can have more streets repaired, but also create a maintenance fund. And I would activate that maintenance fund very quickly. I would use much of the development that I know of. One is like the World Trade Center, for example. It's a lease option, $68 million. I would create a structure to where the city would get that 68 on the front end, do a little bond deal there, so that that could immediately provide seed money for maintenance. We know that when streets are resurfaced, the lifespan is like 1 to 2 years. So we have to create a process that we're adequately repaving and restructuring as needed. We have more data than we've ever had before, so we know where the potholes are and how big they are. But we need to implement, we need to spend the money, fix our streets.
Judge Bagneris.
I want to fix our streets, but I want to fix it one time. We got to coordinate. We got to make sure that anybody who's got to put in wires or pipes or cables or any kind of connector, that all those departments coordinate with each other so that when we fix it, it's fixed. One time. I'm sorry? No.
All right, Mr. Henry.
Yes. You cannot be a first-class city and have third-world streets. You know, my wife's sitting on the front row here. She's from Trinidad and Tobago. And that's a third world country. And their streets are better than the streets in New Orleans, I have to admit, okay? So we have to do better than that. What I'll do is, one, I want to use the right materials to repair our streets. We want to use permeable concrete. That way it helps us with our water table. But then in addition to that, while the streets are open, we got $2 billion to repair streets coming from FEMA. While the streets are open, I want to bury power lines, communication lines, cable lines. In addition to that, we're going to run fiber optic in there. That way we can do public Wi-Fi. So we're going to be smart about it, but we're going to have a dig once policy so that all utility coordination is done one time for the next 300 years. We don't have to always have these overhead power lines to look like a third world country. Other thing we'll have is we'll have a barrel management program. Other cities, everywhere I've ever been, we had a 21-day barrel management policy. Those orange barrels that are all over the place, 21 days and they're gone. Here, my mama's got a tree growing through a barrel on her street. That's how long they've been there, okay? Well, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Sticking on the important topic of infrastructure, our next question comes from Alan Johnson, and we will start responses with Judge Vagnaris.
Judge, streets is one of those problems where the solution can create more problems. An example would be when you're adding on streetcar tracks for the RTA, like at the end of Canal Street, and there's a lot of work done, you could put a business out of business. So how are you going to coordinate and plan and get all those different agencies and construction crews working together so you don't negatively affect those businesses that are along those streets?
Well, you say that the key word there is plan. You know, you have to have a plan before you start digging up, putting in rails. You know, it's coordination, cooperation, organization. That's what you have to do in order to go into any area and deal with taking up the streets to put down rails or putting the rail over the streets or whatever you have to do. All those departments have to get together, and you have to pay attention to the neighborhood that you're putting the materials, overlaying the materials in, because then it becomes a question of timing and planning with the businesses in the neighborhood as well.
And who will you delegate that responsibility to?
I'm going to delegate the responsibility to whoever I vetted to be the best person to head up the Department of Streets.
Thank you. Mr. Henry.
I was going to say, as opposed to Public Works.
Okay. Yes. Listen, Al, you couldn't have hit a sore spot with me, because right now I have a business at the end of Canal Street that is currently being affected by construction that is going on that has tremendously impacted my business. Now, nobody ever told me, nobody ever asked me would it have an impact, is there some other alternative or coordination that could be done? They just did it. So one of the things that I'll put in place across the city is an accountability system. Here's how it goes. Every single quarter, every single month, my CAO or myself is in each of the 5 council districts going through action items and action plans. Once a quarter, in the mayor's office, be myself and all of my department heads, including the police chief and all the other department heads. You don't have to go through a broker. You step to the mic and you speak to the mayor. We'll delegate and take action items from that. Once a year, we're going to have a community congress with no microphone and keypads everywhere. And at that time, they'll do 2 things. They'll help me prioritize the budget, and they'll also give me a performance appraisal. That's how you ensure that you're being responsive to the citizens.
Thank you. Councilwoman Cantrell.
So I would definitely have an infrastructure officer to be responsible for the coordination between DPW as well as the Sewage and Water Board. There are problems with the lack of coordination. In addition to that, the outreach to communities has to be a top priority and built into the process and the plan prior to moving forward. I would also ensure that we have community benefits agreements that are attached to the contracts that we initiate, much like they do in San Francisco. And when that communication is happening between the administration and the community will determine what types of improvements that they would like to see in addition to the street work, because we have to show them a little love on the front end, even while they're going through the progress. And I think we're not maximizing our opportunity there to leverage additional dollars, but I would have that built into the procurement process as well.
I don't like the deal between them benefit agreements.
Yeah, well, you don't like to get from that. You business, pro-business, I'm people, you know.
All right, another vital topic for people across this city is jobs. And we will start this question with Bruce Nolan, and we will begin responses with Mr. Henry.
I'm curious what you would identify, each of you 3. We all know this city, we all live in it. What private economic development success stands out in New Orleans in the last 10 years? And what can we learn from it going forward?
Starting with me?
Yes, sir, Mr. Henry.
Well, I don't know of a lot of economic development success this administration has had. I guess the airport would be one, GE would be the other one. Is that what you mean?
I'm talking about private economic development successes.
The
World
primary
War
one
II Museum, you pick it. Tell me why it worked and what we can learn from it.
I would say the migration of jobs from GE to the city of New Orleans. They brought 300 new jobs to the city of New Orleans. Why I think it's important is because it demonstrates that if you're relevant, if you go out and aggressively recruit Fortune 1000 companies and you put a customized value proposition in front of them, they will come. You have to go out there. This mayor has called on 3 Fortune 1000 companies in 8 years. I'll do 204, okay? We have to begin to change the trajectory if we want to create job momentum in this city. Every other major southern city is growing except New Orleans, and we have to stem that tide.
Thank you. Councilwoman Cantrell.
Private development. So I would choose South Market, right in the CBD warehouse district. South Market, Beacon 1, Beacon 2 has truly activated the warehouse district. It really has brought jobs, retail, national retail, walkability in the areas that need it most. But I'm gonna tell you, I'm proud of it. But I'm not proud of the process that we had to have those developers go through. Because we promised them a pilot on the front end and only the administration changed it in midstream. And you know, when you put these complex deals together, they're almost like you pull one string, the whole deal falls apart. They had to call on me, their council member, to step on in there, ruffle little feathers. Unfortunately, that wasn't my intent, but you have to get things done. So we have to make sure that, one, we have predictable incentives in place that people can count on when they choose to take a risk and invest in the city of New Orleans.
Thank you. Judge Bagneris. Judge Bagneris.
I would have to point to the expansion of Harris on the second floor level, where they're about to bring in early next year the Fillmore and a class restaurant. That's going to be a big addition to the job market as well as to the tax market for the city.
Thank you very much. We are winding down to the very end of this debate. We have one more final question for the panel, and this goes to Sidney Torres, and we will start responses with Councilwoman Cantrell.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. I appreciate you guys coming, and the audience, too. Last question. One of the leading candidates decided at the 11th hour not to attend and to blame it on the panel change, and I think this panel has done a pretty good job. What do y'all think? What do you think about this situation, and what do you think if this person was elected for mayor?
Councilwoman.
Ooh, Sidney. Now, you know I love you now, but I'm like, what's love got to do with it? Well, now, you know, listen, I'm only in control of my own little schedule. I have a 9-year-old, I'm a mom and a wife and all that, and a councilwoman, you know, so I have to keep up with my own self. But, you know, and thank you for having this event this evening, because as I started, it was always about the people, and really that's what motivated me to be here. I've always stood with the people of our city, and I always will.
Judge Bagneris.
A mayor should be a leader. It does not matter who the panel members happen to have been. When you're a leader, you're able to respond to the questions, you know, whatever the questions may be. Now, if you're saying that there was someone on the panel that you were leery of the question, yeah, then that's not leadership. That's cowardly. You know, you come in You come in whenever something is posed, even if it's difficult, you have to respond to the question, because whoever is on this panel is representing the citizens of our city, and that representation should be acknowledged, adhered to, and you have to stand there and deal like the three of us did, respond.
Thank you. Mr. Henry.
I think it's an insult. I think it's an insult to you out here. I think it's an insult to you. And I think it's an insult to you, the viewers, because this wasn't no trivial forum. This is a big-time forum, the first televised forum. I can't imagine anything short of death that would not allow me to be here, or some true family emergency. I didn't know you guys from a can of paint, quite frankly, right? But I knew that if you want the job, and if you understand that conditions aren't going to always be predicted and planned, that you got to deal with the issues head on as you take them, that's what leadership is. The other thing is, she don't like to look, I'm the most qualified candidate here. She's not comfortable with that. Okay?
Thank you. All right, we are coming down to the final moment here. This is the part of the debate where each of the candidates.
Sewage and Water Board job.
Come to the final part of the debate where each of the candidates has the opportunity to give your final speech, your closing statement to the voters here in New Orleans. Each of you has 1 minute to make your closing statement. We will start with Judge Bagneris.
Lucky me. I have a very simple vision for our city. I have a vision where a tourist or a resident could walk down the street and not get hit over the head, where you could bring your family out to a restaurant and not have fear of being robbed, where you can drive down our interstate and not have to duck bullets from rival gang members, where you can actually put your child to bed and not worry about a stray bullet taking his or her life. It's a simple vision. I have a vision where every able-bodied individual who wants a job would be able to get a job. I have a vision where we don't wake up every other month to a boiled water advisory, where we're not worried about lead in our water, where we can cross the street without donning a swimsuit. My visions are very, very simple. I want a New Orleans who's able to be a vibrant city that rises to what she can be, a first-class, world-class city. Join me in this vision, elect me mayor, and it will happen.
Thank you. Next closing statement, I will turn to Councilwoman Cantrell.
Okay, me?
Yes.
Thank you all so much. I have demonstrated my commitment to our city. I've listened, I build consensus, and I deliver results. It's been on every level that has been important to the quality of life of our people. And I'm going to continue to deliver as your next mayor. I have a 9-year-old daughter that I want to raise in our city to where she doesn't shake or get scared at the sound of gunshots. Or I have to kind of rattle her when we pull up in our driveway to say, hurry up, don't give me any lip because we need to get in that house. All of our people, we deserve hope, protection, and opportunity. I've been in the battle, I've been in the trenches, no training wheels needed for me. This is the biggest election that we will see in our city long time. And we need someone that can hit the ground running. I'm LaToya Cantrell. I want to be your next mayor and continue to deliver results for our people.
And the last word of the evening, the closing statement goes to Mr. Henry.
Thanks for having me and thanks for being here. Mayor New Orleans is the CEO of the second largest employer in Orleans Parish. 4,000 employees, $1 billion capital and operating budget, unions and non-unions, complex enterprises like hospitals, transportation systems, all of those types of things. So when you look for a mayor, you want someone that can hit the ground running, not just with a vision, but also has the knowledge and experience to actually execute and deliver, and the track record to demonstrate that. So I'm the only one that's managed over 50 people on this panel. Only one that's ever managed and hired an executive. Only one that's ever had a budget of over $50 million, and I've had billions, okay? Only one that's actually managed unions. Only one that's actually migrated jobs to different geographies in my professional career. Only one that's actually delivered municipal services like water, wastewater, stormwater services that we need today. I've run a DBE program and helped to deliver over $150 million of value for those DBEs. I've fixed streets. I've fixed pipe leaks. Okay, I understand how to do that. I've redeveloped the neighborhood. I've actually also designed the energy efficiency program that was just deemed as the #1 energy efficiency program in the country, Energy Smart, here. In addition to that, I've deployed performance management across this country. If you want good government, you want strong management, and you want a vision to make it happen, Troy Henry is your only candidate. Thank you. I'm number 41. God bless you.
Thank you to all the candidates. That wraps it up for the People's Debate. We appreciate everyone for tuning in. We want to thank the candidates for giving their time, the panelists for their insightful questions, and we want to thank our presenter, VoicePack. And also from all of us here at Loyola University, thank you for your time. Make sure your voice is heard. I'm Alice Stewart. Have a great night.